Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Experiences Living Abroad. I am here with Dominique. How are you, Dominique?
I am fantastic. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Awesome. Dominique, tell our viewers, where are you from?
I was born in Jersey and I was half raised in Jersey and Virginia, but I claim New York now because I lived there for all of my 20s. I would just say like the East Coast, but yeah, Virginia is where I like did most of my maturation, I guess.
Mhm.
Those are my three stomping grounds.
And where are you currently?
I'm currently in France in a very tiny village. It's like 600 people.
Wow.
And it's about an hour and 15 minutes outside of Paris.
And what's this small area called?
It's called Cerbonne.
Oh, beautiful. And how did you find this place?
I found it through a site called Workaway. The house that I found, I came here for, I don't know, it was like 2 weeks or something. And I just like really hit it off with, the guy that owns the house, he is building like a self-sustainability project.
Mhm.
And it was like the first week we were like father and daughter, like it was just like, we understood each other. Like I understood exactly what was going on. So I ended up staying for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And then during all of the confinement and everything else that was going on, I was like, oh, I really want to go back to France because this is the place that you would want to be during the pandemic,
Mm.
more or less. And so I ended up just coming back after a chaotic 3-month period at the end of the year.
Okay.
That's how I found it. And it's pretty cool.
So when I first met you, Dominique is part of our language class. We're classmates, and that's how we met. But when I first met you, you were in Ireland, correct?
Yes, yes.
So take us back to the first time you moved abroad. What country did you move to first, and what made you choose that country?
So I started traveling at the end of 2018. A job that I had finished up. I lost my apartment and I was just like single and free. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I started traveling. And the first place I came was to France because I've been obsessed with France since I was like, I don't know, a little girl. And it was the language that I learned in high school.
Hmm.
And so it just made sense. I was like, all right, I'll go to France first and then I'll take it from there, like whichever countries I can go to. And I learned a lot doing that because obviously like traveling is a lot of work. I like ran out of money. I was like, I met really great people. So like everything worked out as like way beyond my wildest dreams. But it was pretty chaotic that first year. And then when I came back to the States, I still didn't know what I was going to be doing. But that year I lived in France probably for the most of the year, but I kept leaving the Schengen area. So I traveled from here, and in Schengen, I was in Sweden and Portugal. And then I traveled in West Africa. I was only in Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, and in Ghana, and just back and forth. Like I was really just like hopping countries. I don't know if I could do that now, but it was fun at the time. And then when I went back home to Virginia, where my parents are, is when like the whole COVID thing started up, and I was like looking for work and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And then I had brought a ticket to come back to France, but because everything had gone into lockdown, I just had like a ticket voucher. And I had like started like my visa process and all this other stuff, but everything got terminated. But I was itching to get out. So I brought a ticket to Ireland because it was one of the only countries allowing Americans in.
Wow.
And so that everyone was like, what are you doing in Ireland? I was like, yo, this is the only place I could go. And it was close to Schengen. And so I figured I'd be good. I could just like hop over. But then they went into lockdown when I arrived. So I was like, it was a mess. And And so the Ireland story is pretty interesting because when I arrived, we went into lockdown and I tried to do another workaway. And I don't know if your viewers know, but workaway is a site where they have a few different ones, but it's essentially woofing. And it's for travelers who are looking for lodging, but are tight with a tight budget. And so you can work a few hours a day and you'll get like a place to sleep, or, you know, you'll meet family. It's essentially like an adult cultural exchange program. And obviously, like this place, I found it through Workaway. And the previous one, I had only done it twice, and I had an extremely like the best experience, and they turned into like family, really close friends. So I was just like, oh, it's great. But the one I found in Ireland, he was a jerk.
Oh, no.
So I ended up going to like the deep in the Irish countryside by myself, just to find out this guy was a jerk. And then like a day later, walking along the narrow Irish country roads by myself, trying to like get out. And the place that I ended up finding, it was like 4 minutes away, but I ended up staying there for 2 months. And the lady, she was really lovely. And I mean, like really just one of those kind of stories where you appreciate people and you're like, thanks for looking out for me. And so she like looked out for me for almost 2 months. And I had like this whole cottage to myself. And I ended up writing like the first draft of this manuscript. And it was just like really, really nice. And then after that, I had to try to like, you know, return to civilization. So then I was in Dublin for another couple of weeks. And when I tried to get into the Schengen area, I tried to fly into Norway because at the time, you know, the EU orange, green traffic light system thing that they have going on. Yeah. But when I got to the airport, he was like, where do you think you're going? I was like, to Norway. He was like, no, you're not. I was like, what you mean? He was like, not with this passport. And so I got rerouted to London, and I ended up staying there for a month. And then that's when I think I was chatting with you, and you're like, girl, you can come to Portugal. And then Portugal was like, no, you can't.
Wait, so you never made it to Portugal?
No, girl, because as soon as I had brought my ticket, I brought Airbnb. And then the day before I was supposed to leave was when they was like, oh, no, London has another variant and ain't nobody coming.
London. Yeah.
And so they were like,
that's true.
They were like, nobody's coming. And it was only 2 days of the borders being closed. And I was like, how dare you?
Because I was like, I knew people were coming in without, but yeah. So from London, Portugal and London, nah, that wasn't.
So it wasn't possible at all. So like those few days were really tough because, you know, you have to like take the COVID test and it has to be within a certain amount of time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I ended up just buying a Eurorail to come to Paris. And I had to buy a plane ticket to say I was going to be leaving from Charles de Gaulle. And so I ended up doing all of that. And when I got to Paris, I was like, finally, I'm in the Schengen area. But then I'm only here for like 3 months until I start doing the stuff for the visa again and then figuring out from there. But that's essentially my how I don't even remember what the beginning of the question was.
Right. I started living abroad. I have so many questions. So the first question is, when you said you started traveling in 2018, that was the first time you've done any international travel?
No, I had done some international traveling before, but it was maybe 2 weeks at the most. It was never a long period of time without having like a home base. And it was also the first time I started traveling solo. Like I left New York at the end of, or like somewhere in the middle of December, and was just like, I'm going to just go. And so that was that.
So you must have a huge threshold to deal with fear, because you just did the solo thing. Like half of the stuff you just mentioned, I would be terrified if like that happened to me, and I would immediately go somewhere and sit somebody in a hotel and cry.
It's funny because I think that I'm pretty observant, and when things are happening, I probably should be reacting differently, but I'm way more like observant of everything that's going on versus like, girl, you're in danger. Because like and obviously, like, I wouldn't say there's only two stories where when I'm looking back on it, and if I like think of my sisters in this situation, I'm like, oh no, that was a bit much. And I always tell my parents like a year after.
And I imagine they're terrified if you told them.
And my dad will be like, what are you doing? But yeah, it's really, in all honesty, I think that there's more, it's not as terrifying as it can be all of the time, because for instance, especially with the workaway, like, yes, I had this terrible experience, and it really wasn't that bad. He just was a jerk and ended up, I saw red flags early enough. And so that's why, like, I got myself out of that situation. So I will say that, but I think that there's more good people in the world than there are, the jerks. And so whenever you're in those situations rather than, staying long enough for something terrible to happen, like, as soon as you see a red flag, just get out of there. And that's what I know I call him a jerk already and all of this other stuff, but like, it's just, as soon as I see a red flag, or as soon as I feel like I'm made to feel unsafe, or like that you gaslight me the first time, like, I'm out of there. And so, like, I just started seeing, whenever I start to see things like that happen, I just like get out of there. Because even, traveling through, like, when I was in Senegal, another thing had happened too. And it was always like, all right, no, let me just sit still until like this situation works itself out, rather than aggravating anything or taking it to that level. But yeah, always listen to the red flags and it won't be so terrifying.
Yeah, I will say that your intuition does go in full force and like yell at you at a way that it has not yelled at me before.
Yeah, especially when you're traveling, because you're not home. Like, when you're home, you know your surroundings and you know your areas. And it's a great lesson in being able to listen to those red flags immediately, because then when you do go home, you can be like, oh, no, I'm not about to deal with this, much longer than the first second. And so, yeah, I've learned that a great deal.
Yeah. So workaway, interesting that you say that, because when I was researching moving to Portugal, I actually considered workaway. And then I was like, I'm 40 something years old. Like, should I be doing like volunteering, and like, is this legit? Hadn't heard anything about it. And then I told my friends, and they were like, girl, you finna go live, you gonna move to Portugal first. They were still like, what are you doing? And then secondly, they were like, so you gonna stay on the farm? Is that what you're telling me? They were definitely not supportive.
And it's a hurdle. I think that it really, now I'm sure there's going to be a lot more instances of there not being, or people not having good experiences. And that's why it's so much better and I hate to say this, but it is so much better for kids that are like just out of college, or, they don't have the wherewithal to be like, oh, I can say how many hours a day I'm going to be working, or I can say this is unacceptable, and it's just sort of, you're going through the world and you're figuring it out on your own. But I think it's still a worthwhile experience for people that are older. I know of a few people that have done it in their 40s, their 50s, even their 60s. And if you find a good family or a good host, it is, no matter what age you are, it's a really good experience. But you do have to like go, you might run into like experiences where it's like, no, I can't do that. And also like you're saying with the farm, for me, I don't mind, because I'm like super minimalistic with all these things. And I do like gardening, and I love getting my hands dirty, and all of that interest me. But if it's something that you have to learn, like, you have to be somewhere where people are patient and they're willing to if you're interested in learning it. But yeah, it can be a hurdle.
And the good thing about the component is that it does help you create some type of community. And so for me, moving to a country, didn't speak the language. I think at the particular house, it said they spoke 4 different languages. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can learn a lot. So it was just really, when I was going through the self-exploration, I'm like, oh, I can have community as soon as I move there. So it's definitely some aspects of it that can be really great. If anyone is interested in that, I'll try to find a link and put that in the description box as to more information on that. So with the solo travel, you did a ton of hopping by yourself. What kind of recommendations can you give to women that are interested in kind of making those solo travels?
Um, and slow or solo? Solo.
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 Mm-hmm.
So recommendations. I do think that traveling is about to change a lot
Mm-hmm.
because obviously before there was a lot of budget travel options,
Mm-hmm.
and there's I'm sure plane tickets and all that stuff is about to go up. Um, I think that once you're in a location, like I was when I arrived to Europe, it's so easy to travel around. And so I took the bus twice from here to Sweden, and that was like a whole day's journey. And it just depends on like if your schedule is open and you're literally just taking it day by day, then do it slowly and find your best options so that way you can make the most of it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know, especially when you have people with you, you have to like accommodate
Right.
everyone
Right.
wants and what they want to see and things like that. But by yourself, I would say option one, where you just you just go, is just buy one ticket or like have at least some cornerstones of places that you want to hit, and then like leave the rest of it open to chance or
Mm-hmm.
like opportunities arising and seeing what happens. And then if you do go with option two, where you like plan every detail, I would say still keep a little bit of freedom and flexibility within each area, because you never know like what might change, and like maybe you meet people and they're going to another country. So always keep it flexible and make sure you have tickets that are either refundable or like you may use the voucher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just always keep it open. The other thing I guess is, as far as I mean, it really does depend on budget and how much
Mm-hmm.
time you have, and like if you're going to be meeting up with people. But reach out to your network, reach out to people that you know, because that helped me a lot as well. And also because I was by myself, your family, your friends were going to be like, oh, I know so and so.
Mm-hmm.
So reach out to your network, because they will put you in touch with people that you can stay with, and be open, because I met people who took me in and they knew me from no one,
Mm-hmm.
just when you're meeting people, have that, your intuition, obviously, and make the most out of every meeting, because there really are so many good people out there that are interested in you traveling solo and what your story is. And then they in turn have so much to share. And I guess, yeah, my biggest thing is to just be open, keep everything open. And
Perfect. Perfect. And so, how are you navigating through all of these countries and visas and COVID and all of that other stuff?
I'm not.
Okay.
So, well, the Schengen area thing now, like I'm learning a lot as well, but right now I'm about to apply to, they have a lot of language programs. And through the language program, I can apply for a student visa, or I can get a student visa. And it's like a year-round thing. And then afterwards, I think I'm going to apply to one of the universities here in Paris, and I can do like a humanities studies. But in the beginning, I had no clue. Like I learned a great deal the first year, because I was like, visas? What do you need a visa for? Like, and and also the arrogance, or the being naive as an American.
Mhm.
And now after COVID, knowing that my American passport was like banned, I was like, oh, visas. I gotta get a visa. And so I'm learning all of this stuff right now. And again, I would say reach out to your network. If you know people that have traveled, ask them their experience, because they have the best information. Like,
Mhm.
I think you can read things online and take it with a grain of salt and be like, oh, it won't be that bad. And then come to find out like it really is. So just reach out to the people that you know, because also you're going to have to get, letters of support, or
Right.
you'll have to, stay with people for a bit. And just reach out to your network. But yeah, I'm learning that now for the visas, and I think I'll have to do like a year visa at a time, and hopefully stay enough until they can be like, you know what, this girl has tried her hardest to become French. Let's just go ahead and give her citizenship.
So it's really interesting that you say that, because it's an important component for people to know on the visas. There is parts of the visas where people may have to vouch for you. Local people may have to vouch for you. I know for me registering in my city, when I was talking to my accountant, they would have to register with this Providence, and you need 2 people who live there, and you need to get their ID. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to do that when people I don't know, and they're just gonna give me their ID? Like what, So it is important that for some of these visas, there are some requirements that, there is a local that sponsors you, and, that type of thing. So you really want to be mindful of that, depending on the country that you're choosing. But you brought up a good thing about network. How did you start to establish a network in a community moving to various countries?
I guess I have friends everywhere. So like I have a really good friend, and her parents are in Sweden. So every time I go to Sweden, I go there. I also have family in Sweden, but it's funny because I have never been to their place yet, but I always go to my friend's parents' house, and they take such good care of me. And I'm like always crying when I leave. They're like, no, we need to start kicking this girl out or something. But no. So I have parents of friends and friends that have studied abroad. Like I have my friend who's in London. I stayed in her place while she was in Colombia. I didn't know anyone in Ireland, so that was interesting. And now I still don't know people. No, I know the lady in Ireland. Who else? Yeah, it's like friends of family and family. Like it's really and also being in New York, a lot of my friends did travel. A lot of my friends have networks, outside. So it was a bit of that as well. And then my family is from West Africa. And so it was just like, Dominique's going to be in Ghana, and everyone was calling. They were like, come here. And I was like, chill. I got this. But yeah, so it really, I am very, I like being by myself. Like it's really hard, even here right now, like whenever there's a lot of people that are around, it stresses me out. Mm-hmm. But I cannot stress enough how important it is to appreciate everyone that you have around you, or like just to keep tabs on people, or to just, touch base, or remember your mom's friend from 1992, or who, like, it really is so random, but those are the people that they really have your back. Because and these are lessons that everyone learns throughout life, whether friendships, whatever kind of relationships and stuff like that. But sometimes it'll be your friend that you see every day, and they won't have to give to you. Like they won't have a single modicum of assistance or help or even a good word, but it'll be that one person that like passed you the butter at Thanksgiving dinner in 1996. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember you chewed your food quietly. And that really touched my heart. And they'll be the ones to look out for you. So it's like, just everyone needs to be good to each other. And that's such a lesson too after COVID, because it's like, when you see how much we don't look out for each other, or how much we take each other for granted and stuff, I'm like, no, appreciate everyone, and appreciate the people that appreciate everyone. And so, yeah, the network, can't stress that enough. But you know what's crazy too? The first time I went to Portugal, I remember when I landed and I realized I didn't know any Portuguese. And I felt like such an idiot, because I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to communicate with everyone? But then everyone speaks English to you. And so you realize—
In Lisbon.
Yes. In Lisbon.
I know outside of, and I know there's going to be people from Portugal who's going to comment on this, because there's always this debate, like everyone speaks English. And it's like any language, if you don't use it, you lose it. And some may have learned it, but they're not using it. It's not, and I live in Caxias now, and that's what made it so important for me to learn. Because the first year I was in Lisbon the whole time. I was in Lisbon proper, the middle of the city, and I spoke English.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't feel much of the stress. And then we move into Caxias, which in essence, people need to understand that also changes your price. Is that, you know, when you can be in a place where you can have the language, you're going to pay almost, I'm paying 50%, if not 60% less
Of what
not
you were paying.
living.
That's a deal.
Yeah. So it's like if you can learn it, and it's a challenge because I tend to feel insecure more often than not. But
It's
now,
hard.
yeah, but now that people see me, and now the classes that I can hear every other third word, I'm still not that great at communicating, but I can kind of understand what someone just said to me. And so that's a different space for me to be, but
No,
it's interesting. And then I get to see the people over and over again. And now, you know, they're not as irritated about me not saying it correctly.
no, but and I'm sure for them too, like you may not see it, but like watching your progress is a good thing for them too. Like I think it's good on both sides. And those are all the steps that it takes, because you do go from feeling wildly insecure about just communicating with people. And then when you start picking up, whether it's every third word, or like you have the vocabulary pop up in your head when you see the things around, you're like, oh, I am making progress. It's like, it's one of the best feelings ever. And yeah, and it's interesting because now there's a guy that's here. He is Portuguese, or he's his national. He's from Portugal, but I was like, oh snap! I got someone to practice Portuguese with, because every time I come to class now, I have nothing but French in my head, and I'm like, crap. This is why did I start learning this language if I'm not going to be able to speak it? But now I have someone, and I'm like practicing with him, and I'm like, all right, great. And so yeah, but
That's
graduate,
super dope.
it's hard.
It is. It is. And but you've been such a resource because you speaking French, you've been able to shed some light on a lot of us in the class when we do our independent study. It's just like, you know, you've been given great insight and allowing us to think of it in a different way. So thank you for that.
Anytime.
So tell me, how has moving abroad changed your perspective on life?
Whew, how you got to choose yourself. I think that in the beginning, I I can't remember exactly what mindset I was in before I started traveling, but right now in the place that I am, I think about like every moment with such
Intent.
reverence, yeah, and intent. And it's like, if I'm not doing something that is just fulfilling or enriching, and like it's really just little things, just walking along the river, or how I spend a moment, whether I'm learning Portuguese or I'm like writing my novel, or if I'm working, or just whatever it is. Like there is so much more intention in every moment when you're not at home, because we tend to take life for granted more when we're always if maybe not all of us, but I certainly did, where it just felt like I was wasting away the moments. And I think the hardest thing right now for me is like I really miss my family, and I didn't even realize how long I had been away. But it's like I really miss my family, but do I really miss America? And I don't. And so I'm like constantly figuring out what that means, and if I'm actually going to be living this far away from them. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm constantly contemplating. But as far as just changing my outlook on life, it's like you get this experience as yourself in this moment. And if you don't want to be where you are, change it. And even if it just means like going to the apartment across the hall, or going to a city that's next to you, or changing countries or whatever, like you are not obligated to live your life according to anything outside of you, like whatever it is that, and obviously make it work and make sure that it's not harmful, or make sure that it's serving you. But and it takes so many different manifestations. But but yeah, like you learn everything that you know for yourself right now, or however you think you know it, you it takes on a deeper meaning, or it takes on a new color. It takes on a different smell. Like it's just, you just add to it. And so, yeah, life has just become a lot more full. And I like that. I keep telling people this, but it's like The Sound of Music, the Reverend Mother, when she told, you know this movie? Do you know the references? But it's like when Reverend Mother told Maria that she has to look for her life, like climb every mountain and ford every stream. And it's like, every time someone asks me like, oh, what are you doing there? When are you coming back? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm looking for my life. Like, and everything that I touch and everything that I find, everything that like finds me, like I honor it. And I'm so much more aware that it's all just passing by. And so, yeah, I'm looking for my life. And so every time someone asks me that now, they're like, what are you doing over there? I'm like, I'm looking for my life. Like,
there's no follow-up question after that, I'm sure.
That's it.
No follow-up. So I have one last question for you, but I do want to go back to something you said early in their interview. So when you were saying you were moving around and you ran out of money, what did you do to turn it all back around and get back on course?
So when I was here, I don't know how many illegal things you can say on here, but
nope. Just make sure you safe in all things you say.
No, I started teaching English while I was here, and I say that the reason I say illegal is because I understand now why you get into more trouble for the visa, because they want to make sure that you're not making money. But so yeah, I did the teaching English to folks, and then my parents. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, but I got to that moment where I was like, yo, your girl needs a ticket home. And so they were there to help me. So
you flew back to the States?
And I flew back to the States, got me a job, started making money again. And but when I started traveling at the end of 2018, I had finished up a project, like a pretty big project. So I had a lot of money to like get me started. But because it was my first time solo traveling, I didn't budget properly, but you can still make that work. Like if you start out traveling, like say you, however much money you have and you plan properly, you can probably get by. But I was just out here like, oh, a baguette. And not realizing like it was adding up. And so, yeah.
Any tips on helping any of the viewers, plan properly? What are some of your tips?
Yeah. As far as lodging goes, I'm a huge proponent for Workaway because you can stay places, you'll get food, you'll get, nice accommodations, and then you can do the things that you want to do on the weekends if it's close by to whatever, like big cities. And also you'll meet a bunch of people. And so Workaway is a great way to save money. The budget airlines and just like finding tickets at their cheapest. So always plan in advance as to when you're going to buy your ticket, and then make sure
travel light. Don't bring a whole bunch of stuff. Travel light.
Listen, I have one suitcase and it's a carry-on. I don't care. Yes. Just you do not need half the things if you have to carry 2 suitcases. And it was really funny because like when I was in Africa, like your family or friends, everyone just wants to like send you back with stuff. And I'm like, what are you making clothes for? I have 1 suitcase. Where is it going to go? If you're a stickler with your 1 suitcase rule, you're fine. Like just carry 1 suitcase. You don't have to pay all those extra luggage fees. You don't have to worry about anything. If you plan what's going in your suitcase, I think you can like organize the rest of your travels, but keep it to 1 suitcase.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key of budget travel. And I was good. I learned how to do it in the US carry-on. Completely different size in Europe. So I haven't packed it all down to the European carry-on size yet, but I'm working on that.
And it's hard too because like even now I still don't know the difference when you change the metric to the kilo, like I don't know any of those what's it called? So sometimes I'll still pay like an extra $10 when I'm buying my ticket to be like, okay, I'm gonna make sure like I don't have to pay extra at the ticket counter. And they'll be like, oh, you're way underweight. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so yeah, pack light, like Erykah Badu said, please, I'm telling you, you will enjoy your travels so much more.
And do you have any advice for individuals who are interested in moving abroad?
Do it if you can. And don't wait for the perfect moment, because it does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
Just go ahead and do it, and find like, challenge yourself. Maybe it's someplace like absolutely no one, but if you do know people that are like nearby, do that as well. But just do it. And especially right now with COVID and everything else going on, obviously be safe and take the necessary precautions. But as soon as a moment arises and you can't come up with enough, like you're going through all of your excuses, and you just ask yourself, it's either I want to do this or I don't want to do this. Because we can all dream 1,000 dreams and say, yes, one day I'm going to, climb that tree, or I'm going to go to the moon, and like never get to it. And just, yeah, do it. If you want to do it and you can do it and it's not harming you or anyone else, do it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for speaking
Yes.
with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a very fun conversation.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. We know you can be anywhere you decide to be here with us, so we appreciate it. Another Experiences Living Abroad. Till next time.